let me introduce the organizing director for Local 6516, Adit.
Hello, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes. Wonderful. Y'all, feel free to sit down and relax if you want. We have blankets at the GLO tent. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Just give me a quick sec. Alrighty, so thank you all so much for coming out today on this International Workers' Day. For those who don't know what International Workers' Day is, it's essentially, it was created to commemorate the 1986 general strike in favor of an 8-hour work week. Now, that was for workers fighting for their basic dignity and for something that we now take for granted, such as the 8-hour workday. They were targeted by the government, they were attacked, they were persecuted, but their general strike, which is something that would be so hard to organize, right? Across cities, across labor unions. It started on May 1st, and to commemorate the groundwork they laid for us, we celebrate International Workers' Day, or May Day. Woo! Cool. So now we have reached very unprecedented times, as I'm sure we're all aware, with this current federal administration. But the lessons of May Day serve to remind us that ultimately, who has the power? One thing I always like to keep in mind is that how long have politicians pushed for the fight for 15? I remember hearing this 10 years ago, and the federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. However, when workers took matters into their own hands, when they came together, when they unionized, when they fought for their contracts, that's how they ultimately got the better pay and conditions. Workers made that happen. The people made that happen, not the politicians. Yeah. And that's what makes this moment so important. We need to ask ourselves, how can we actually confront fascism and authoritarianism, and win? How did Crazy Horse keep his people's indigenous land for as long as he could? When the government segregated our schools and left Black Americans and people of color zero resources, how did Bobby Seale help launch America's first free school meal program for children? How did workers fight for their dignity when the government denied them their rightful support? They came together, they cared for one another, they came together, they unified, and they took back the power that the authoritarian structures held over them. Yeah. That's right. Now, this federal administration is powerful, but we've seen where the real power lies, right? It's with us when we're unified. And fascism relies on division. It relies on separating out vulnerable communities, scapegoating them, whether it's immigrants, trans individuals, or even our colleagues and comrades in Gaza. It's not lost on me that as a higher ed worker myself, that every single university and institute of higher education is no longer standing there. Whether it's Mahmoud Khalil or Rasha Alawiya disappeared off the streets, or whether it's the mass sets of people sent to a concentration camp in El Salvador with zero due process. Fascism is hoping they can break our unity with one another. And it's up to us to stand up for one another, to have each other's backs, and to make sure that we are the ones keeping each other safe. So in that spirit, let's get organized together. Each organization here, represented here today, will have a different set of skills, will have different institutional knowledge, different resources, and different ways that this administration has impacted them. And different ways we can also fight back. So let's get connected. Let's figure out how we can all help each other, how we can get plugged into each other's networks, and to make sure we can continue to have each other's backs beyond today alone. From the belly of the beast, and when the world is dark, it's our job to be the beacon of light that can't be diminished. And today is just the first step. So I'm going to ask that we use today to turn our light into a spark that will only grow from here. Let's start building our united front here today. How does that sound? Yeah! Woo! All right, everyone. Before we go into some of our representatives from organizations who will be speaking, I just want to remind folks of a couple of things. We're going to have a QR code at the check-in table that's basically going to list things that collaborating organizations have given to us, so you can scan and see a full list of sort of things that people need. We also have masks and sunscreen for all attendees at the table. We have waters, we have a tent, we have blankets. Feel free to take advantage of all of that. And just a couple of last minute reminders for health and safety. So we're also gonna have masks for health and digital safety at the table. We'll have our local leadership on megaphones. If you ever hear megaphones or things of that nature, just make sure you're listening to them. And then we will also have two lovely photographers for safety, our wonderful staff, Hannah, and our wonderful physics grad, Yuru. But if you see any odd behaviors or anything suspicious or anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, please alert Marshall. They'll be wearing orange vests. And just generally, the marshals are here to keep us safe. All right, who's ready to hear from some of our amazing Rhode Island organizations? All righty. One organization that GLO has had the fortune of working with very closely is RIFT. So I'd love to welcome up the field representative and former president of the Rhode Island Labor History Society, Jim Parisi.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I bring greetings from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and as was mentioned, I'm also past president of the Labor History Society. So rather than comment on some of the teacher issues that are forefront of our mind right now, like the stupidity of eliminating the U.S. Department of Education or the outrage we should all be feeling for a U.S. Supreme Court poised to support religious charter schools, I'd rather talk about history for a minute. And maybe it's me reminiscing. I remember the celebration of my first May Day in Providence, Rhode Island in 1980, when I was a student in this area. And I remember the chant at the time, pardon the vulgarity, but it was May Day, May Day, May Day 1980. President Carter, stick it up your ass. We're gonna fight for the working class. And then I reflect on that because a year later we had Ronald Reagan as president, and we thought we had a beef with Jimmy Carter. Wait until the anti-union guy came down. May Day comes from two different sources. May 1st is halfway between the spring equinox, first day of spring, and the summer solstice, first day of summer. And it was traditionally a time of celebration of the beginning of summer. The Romans celebrated Flora, the goddess of flowers. You can see why this time of year would be a celebration of that. And particularly the Celts, the Irish and the Welsh celebrated as well. Yeah. And I would note that the May Day celebrations in those cultures involve maypoles and bonfires. So note to glow for May Day 26. May Day bonfire might be an awesome fun thing. May Day's importance as a day of worker pride and protest did come out of the struggle for the 8-hour day. In the U.S. in the 1880s, the standard workday was 10 hours, and it was not 5 days a week, it was 6 days a week. Folks worked on Saturdays, so they had a 60-hour work week. Labor organizations like the Knights of Labor and the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, the predecessor of the AFL-CIO, promoted action to establish an 8-hour day. Their anthem was 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, 8 hours for what we will. It was a real fight at the time for what we would today call the work-life balance. In October of 1884, the union established May 1, 1886 as the date that the 8-hour day would be standard. To enforce it, they called on a general strike on Saturday, May 1st, 1886. And hundreds of thousands of workers held rallies and went on strikes that day. There's an estimate about 500,000 Americans were on strike for an 8-hour day, May 1 of 1886. In West Chicago, there was a very successful company employing thousands of workers making reapers, machines that harvested wheat and other crops. The generalist strike occurred at the McCormick Harvesting Machine Company as well. McCormick employed scabs, strike breakers, and the strike continued on the following day, Monday, May 3rd. Towards the end of the day, workers confronted the scabs, police fired on the crowd, and they killed 2 striking McCormick workers. Community was outraged, as you can imagine. Following the police killing of these 2 workers, the local community, some of whom were anarchists, organized a protest rally at Haymarket Square in Chicago. One of the first flyers did say, ask workers to arm themselves, so that was later edited out to exclude that exhortation. The rally was on May 4th. It was largely peaceful, and it was attended by a few thousand people. There were a number of speakers. Even the mayor of Chicago was there at the time. He left early. It was quiet. There was a labor activist Methodist minister who was the closing speaker, and he finished around 10:30. Shortly after that, a large police force came in. They had gathered nearby, and they dispersed the crowd. And someone threw a bomb at the police, immediately killing one and wounding scores of others. Gunfire was exchanged, and at the end of the day, 7 police and 4 workers were killed that day, with close to 80 folks wounded. The reaction was swift and immediate and very severe. The employers regained momentum. They reinstated the 10-hour day. Unions, immigrants, and political activists such as the anarchists were persecuted, particularly in the media, something we're kind of aware of these days. Anarchists were blamed, and while the person who actually threw the bomb fled the country, 8 people were tried for being co-conspirators. 2 of the 8 were present. The other 6 weren't even at the Haymarket at the time. Ultimately, 7 of the 8 were convicted and sentenced to death by hanging. The 8th person was sentenced to 15 years. 4 of them were hung. 2 requested clemency and were given life sentences, and 1 committed suicide the day before the execution by blowing his head off with a smuggled-in bomb. The defendants were vilified by the conventional media and were lionized by the working people. The commemoration of the folks, the commemoration of the Haymarket martyrs is really why we celebrate May Day today. The AFL-CIO in 1888 called for another general strike for May 1, 1890, in support of the 8-hour day, and Sam Gompers, that cigar-making first president of the AFL, wrote to the international organization of political folks, socialists, and working class that was meeting in Paris, asking for international support for their campaign for an 8-hour day. The International called for demonstrations to support it on May 1 of 1890, and that's why we have May Day today. Most of Europe and some places in South America joined in what was now an international movement. Most countries today honor working people on May Day, also known as International Workers' Day, and ironically, a few years later in 1894, the U.S. decided to celebrate Worker Day on the first Monday in September instead of May 1st. A couple of quick reflections before I close. I think it's good to know that the corporate media, who were the primary reason why the martyrs of Haymarket were executed, was used to suppress free speech and political advocacy. I think it's good to know that the AFL was a leader in calling a general strike, a strike across all industries. I think it's good to know that the labor movement had an international focus 150 years ago, and I think it's good to know that militancy yields results with perseverance. May Day reminds me that the task is never done. There's always opportunity to advocate for fellow workers and to focus on working class issues, which unites us all. Let us celebrate May Day with pride, perseverance, and activism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Next, I'm excited to welcome up Holly Kirkman of Utah, Rhode Island, who is a negotiation committee representative for our very own Brown University Librarians Union. Welcome, Holly.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Holly, and I'm here representing the bargaining committee of the Brown University Library staff, who are unionized under the United Service and Allied Workers of Rhode Island, also known as USAW-RI. Yeah. I'm proud to be here with you all to honor the history of labor organizing and to celebrate the wins of organized labor here in Providence. Yes, please clap. For instance, on Tuesday, our membership at the USAW-RI branch at the Brown University Library held a unanimous vote to ratify our contract. Woo! It took nearly a year for us to get to this point. 11 months of work and organizing and struggle, many months of precarity for our members who had to work without a contract because Brown University was determined to nickel and dime us until the very end. Shame! But wherever they pushed us, we fought back. When Brown University dragged their feet, we fought back. When Brown University told us that we didn't deserve what we were demanding, we fought back. When Brown University tried illegal, regressive bargaining tactics at the table, we fought back. We had to file an unfair labor practice with the NLRB to get them to get their shit together, but we stood firm, we fought back, and we won. Thank you. I'm proud of our negotiators and our business agent, some of whom are here today. It was a lot of hard work and time, and we represented our members with strength and with integrity. But a ratified contract isn't just the negotiators' victory. It's the victory of our members who put their faith in us, who trusted us, and who told us what they needed. It's the victory of the other USAW-RI units at Brown, especially facilities and dining, who negotiated in solidarity with us. It's the victory of the labor organizers on campus, who spoke out and rallied and brought us together. It's the victory of our sibling unions at Brown, our sibling unions in New England and at other higher ed institutions who stood with us and showed up for us and looked to us to support them in their fight for a fair contract. Our fair contract is their victory, it's our victory, but it's also our responsibility to be proud, to stand firm, and to fight for the rights of workers and the working class here in Providence, in Rhode Island, in New England, and all over the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I just want to remind folks what makes Brown a university or an institution. It's not the billions of dollars that they refuse to use in their endowment. It's the workers of the campus, right? It's the graduate workers. It's the undergraduate TAs. It's the librarians. It's the staff. And one of the other important groups I'd love to invite up of Brown's chapter of the AAUP, the secretary of Brown's chapter of the American Association of University Professors, Denise Davis.
So I don't need to tell you that we're in a crisis for society, for democracy, for free speech, for the rule of law, or that the Trump administration is ruling very deliberately with fear. How many of our international students, campus service workers, and faculty, and in particular contingent faculty who are more precarious, can't be here today because they fear for their immigration status? It's up to academic workers, students, alumni, communities, and citizens to demand due process, to demand legal support for those interrogated or detained, to demand that our institutions draw lines in the sand that will not be crossed. Academia has a key role to play in democracy. Dictators have historically gone for academics early. Why? because we teach people to think, because we ask questions, because we pursue knowledge and understanding. Without an educated and informed public, democracy cannot function. The National AAUP is suing the Trump administration, helping university faculty get organized and to coordinate. The organization is providing legal support and is leading the charge to block unlawful funding cuts and challenge violations of AAUP-supported principles of due process, academic freedom, faculty governance, and unlawful dismissals. The Brown chapter of the AAUP, along with 16 other chapters, has signed on to an amicus brief urging a preliminary injunction against ideological deportations of students and scholars. Just yesterday, a judge threw out the government's appeal to dismiss the case, saying, "It is hard to imagine a policy more focused on intimidating its targets from practicing political speech." The lawsuit stands. We are partnering with other labor organizations on campus to form the first Brown University Labor Council. The Constitution will be signed tomorrow. We need all kinds of groups to work together on immigration, free speech, and the defense of publicly funded research. Project 2025 and its extremist ideologues have made their goals clear. Put universities in existential terror, they say. Use Columbia University as a prototype, they say. Leverage public funds to bring them to their knees because money talks, they say. Fear is a great motivator, they say. Cause pain to the decision makers. Use money, power, and status to pressure the universities. Establish administrative oversight of departments and course content, they advocate. Under financial pressure, they will fold easily, they've said. Civil rights laws are weapons, they've said. Make university presidents seem like villains, they say. Cut off the funding until they comply, they say. We say no. We call for due process, we call for the right to dissent with impunity, and we call for academic freedom and faculty governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Cool. Yeah, I think one thing that's really important that we get to do here today is the idea that we're all connected, right? The struggles that we have at Brown affect all of us and affect our entire community in different ways. And with that, we're very honored. We just heard from one of our speakers from Brown's chapter of AAUP. I'd love to bring up another esteemed faculty member who is the president of Rhode Island College's chapter of the same AAUP. Can we please welcome up Michaela Arthur?
Good afternoon. I'm Michaela Arthur, president of the RIC AFT Local 1819, the full-time faculty union at Rhode Island College. Woo! Just a few years before our union was... Oh.
If you put it closer to your mouth.
Okay. This good? Okay. Just a few years before our union was established, folks at RIC, along with those at URI and Brown, worked to abolish a loyalty pledge for public school teachers. It was students who first challenged this pledge, which sharply reduced public school teachers' First Amendment rights and restricted even their freedom of thought. Today, we face a nation that similarly questions our integrity as teachers, intruding into our minds and our classrooms in search of a more homogeneous and pliable population. But like our students and colleagues 60 years ago, we will stand strong against this threat. The we in that sentence has to be all of us. I hear all too often questions about who is standing up for faculty, who is standing up for working people. Who is standing up for our democracy? And the answer cannot be to wait for someone to save us. It is we who have to save ourselves. Doing so does not necessarily require some kind of superhuman heroism, but it does require, in the words of the great thinker Tsvetan Todorov, ordinary virtues like caring and dignity, caring for those around us, building ties of connection, and refusing to engage in the kinds of depersonalization and fragmentation that make it possible for us to see human beings as the other. These ordinary virtues help us remember the world we want to build. The working women who marched before us over a century ago knew that money and even fair working conditions were not sufficient to build that world. When they sang about bread and roses, they articulated the importance of a good life, a life in which art and love and beauty are important alongside a fair wage. That is what we continue to fight for today. At Rhode Island College this spring, administrators cut 20 academic programs in fields like modern languages, art history, creative writing, gender studies, and global studies, as well as teacher certification programs, just to name a few. If you want to know more, we have flyers at our table over there. You can get a full list of the programs that have been cut. Cutting fields like these is just another entry on a long ledger of actions in which people are positioned as workers rather than full-fledged humans. Sure, getting a job that pays a living wage is a reason people seek higher education, but it is not the reason higher education exists. These fields are where students turn to find art and love and beauty, the love of learning, the beauty of self-actualization. We rise today as education workers, but we fight for a world in which our ability to work is not what determines whether we have the ability to learn. It is not up to us to finish the task of repairing this world, but neither may we desist from it. So today, I call on you, my siblings in the labor movement, to rededicate yourselves to building that world, a world where all of us have enough, a world where all of us have the freedom to learn and think and speak our conscience, a world where there is bread, but also roses.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is going to be an organizer from Rhode Island's chapter of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'd like to plug real quick. So as you know, the federal government's actions against immigrants, especially in public places, has been very dire. But the PSL, as well as the Olneyville Neighborhood Association and more, have launched a working deportation defense network where they're able to help us train grads to protect other people and to make sure we have community defense networks ready to help our immigrants and our comrades. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jair of the PSL.
Hey everyone, my name is Jair. I'm a lifelong Rhode Islander, and I'm a proud member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. So I just got back from Guatemala. It's my dad's country. And it was beautiful, it was a great time. And when I got back home, the very next Monday when I went in for work, I found out I got furloughed. Which sucked, right? Like I depend on my job, I need my job. And, you know, I don't hold hard feelings against my employer. The Trump cuts froze the grants that funded my job.
Shame!
That's right. And it gutted another one. I have coworkers who didn't lose their jobs but are now down to 10 hours. Coworkers that now have to go and find other jobs in order to sustain themselves. Shame.
Shame!
And they didn't even tell my organization that those cuts were coming. They just did it, and we found out afterwards. But even if they had told my employer, realistically, what could they have done against those cuts? Nonprofits can't throw their weight politically. They're not allowed to endorse politicians, and they exist in the era of neoliberalism after the fall of the socialist bloc, and when all of our social welfare programs were under severe attack in the 80s and 90s, and still to this day. Nonprofits exist to fill the role of what our tax dollars and our government should be doing.
Yep.
but they have no political independence to do so. At this moment in history, where our tax dollars are spent in the billions to commit genocide, where our unions, federal jobs, and college campuses are under attack, and when the shock troops of the fascist state are rounding up, kidnapping, detaining, and deporting immigrant workers and students with zero accountability to the courts, the necessity of political independence for the working class is at an all-time high. That's right. Fascism is a result of many things. It's a result of capitalism and decay, of a capitalist state unable to resolve its own contradictions, and attempts to resolve them instead with ethnic cleansing, with the dissolution of worker organizations, the dissolution and underfunding of universities, with war and conquest. Fascism is also a possibility when the working class is not united, when it's disparate, when it's distrusting of each other, when it's weak and individualistic. Fascism is inevitable when the crises of capitalism become unmanageable and the workers have not achieved unity. Because when the crises of capitalism become unmanageable but the workers are united and independent, then the possibility of socialism, a society for workers, run by workers, when workers not only work the shelves, work the factories, work the restaurants, but own the means of productions, run society, are represented in government, then the possibility of our independence and a society run by us becomes also an inevitability. Political independence of the working class, of the entirety of our class, unity of that class is one of the primary goals of a workers' party. Today is May Day, and the Workers' Party has played a significant role in its creation. A good historian understands the day itself commemorates the Haymarket, and that people in this country, in the US, have a role to play in labor organizing and building socialism. That's right. But this day itself was commemorated by the Second International in the 1800s by the leading labor parties of the day. So why a workers' party? Why not just have only our amazing unions who are at the front line of the struggle economically, who understand firsthand the cruelty of capitalism? Well, for someone recently unemployed like myself, I can't join a union, but I can join a party. That's a huge benefit to me. But in all seriousness, without a strong working class pull that workers from all industries can gravitate towards, workers, unionized or not, will instead gravitate towards the two mainstream parties of the capitalist class. The working class has given support to the Democratic Party for generations, 50 years, to the point where we can ask, what is the Democratic Party without union support? Without union support, the Democratic Party is a footnote in history. Unions and oppressed people have maintained the Democratic Party's relevance the last 50 years. And for what gains? What have everyday working people gained from it, especially recently? We know the Republicans hate unions, attack unions, tear them down. But what has that knowledge from Democratic leadership gotten us? We ended up in the position where we are today in history with that knowledge fully in the hands of people with political power in the leadership of the Democratic Party. If Columbia University, a so-called liberal haven, an Ivy League darling that can expel and fire a union leader the day before negotiations, what hope should the rest of us have in their party and in that system? And that's not to mention Mahmoud Khalil, who is detained and with a green card under threat of revocation on college campus. But this doesn't mean we should abandon hope. The opposite is true. We need to build hope. We need hope now more than ever, but not hope in a capitalist party, not in their so-called decorum and rules-based order. We need hope in the workers, in ourselves, in our unions, and in a workers' party. We need a new pole to gravitate towards that's going to fight for Palestine, that's going to fight for immigrant rights, that's going to fight for students and for workers unquestioningly, every time they're in that ring. We don't need politicians in suits. We need workers like you and me in the streets, in the classrooms, in the restaurants, in the hospitals, leading our struggles. No one knows this better than the unions. I know GLOW doesn't trust CPACs to do much of anything. When they need something, they go and do it themselves.
Woo!
We don't want to hear lies from the Democratic leadership anymore. Obama said he'd pass the card check, and that was a lie. He straight up didn't. Next time a Democrat was in the presidency, it was Biden, and he said he was going to pass the PRO Act. That didn't happen. But he did manage to break up the rail strike. He did threaten them with the National Guard, and he did repress student workers all across the country protesting genocide. So we can't invest in the best liars anymore, because it's not the lesser of two evils, it's the better of two liars. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to invest in the working class. We need strong organizations. We need strong unions. We need a strong workers' party, because the only way workers get their fair dues, the only time the capitalists listen to us, is when we shut it down. We make the world run. And that means we can bring it to a stop when we need to. So we need to build our strength. We need to build our organizations in quantity and in quality. And we need to build strong relationships between organizations, because that's what it's going to take to put weight behind our punches, so that when we really start swinging, the ruling class will not get up. Thank you so much.
Woo! All right, y'all, real quick, let's keep the energy up. Let's do a quick chant. Can y'all clap with me? Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what community looks like.
This is what community looks
When
like.
workers are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When workers are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
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 Woo! All right, y'all. Next, I'd love to invite up the chair of the Rhode Island Professional Staff Association and chair of the Rhode Island Stand Up for Science Committee, Aaron Frechette. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Woo!
Thanks so much, everyone. So, again, my name's Aaron, and I'm representing the National Education Association of Rhode Island's Professional Staff Association at the Rhode Island Department of Health, and I'm also representing the Stand Up for Science Rhode Island Committee. So thank you all for being here on this beautiful day to stand up for workers' rights. So the Near Erie Professional Staff Association at the Department of Health has convened a direct action task force, which I am chairing, to respond to the dramatic changes that we've seen in federal policies and funding priorities. Our members are very, very concerned about how these funding cuts could hurt their jobs, families, and the people that we all serve. The Rhode Island Department of Health is 60% federally funded. So that poses significant concerns to our 320 members' job security and the ability of our state to respond to public health threats. With these cuts that are being proposed to CDC, the National Institutes of Health, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, we're going to see direct impacts here in Rhode Island. It is going to directly impact the way that we can respond to public health threats in the next public health emergency. The members of the Professional Staff Association, we are disease detectives, we're laboratory scientists, we are public health professionals. Public health is an essential public safety service, and it deserves the same respect and funding of other first responders. Thank you. So what do our members do? They do things like conduct outreach to educate Rhode Islanders about ways to prevent disease. We confront infectious diseases. We confront hazardous environments in homes and healthcare facilities. We respond to public health threats and public health emergencies, and we help defend our state against the spread of both acute and chronic diseases. You know, we were the responders in the COVID-19 crisis that helped keep our state healthy and safe, and now basically the thanks that we're getting from our federal government is no thanks, maybe you'll be out of a job. It's not right, and it's not fair, and it's only going to hurt all of us. So the important work that we do at the Department of Health saves lives. It reduces business costs through increased work productivity, and we cannot afford to lose it. So our task force has the mission of identifying opportunities to mobilize our members to advocate against federal policies that harm public health and harm our members and harm all of us in Rhode Island. We encourage all of you to help and speak to your legislators about the importance of funding public health in Rhode Island. We need state funding. We cannot rely clearly on federal funding if it's just going to go away, and we've been relying on it for far too much, for far too long, to carry out basic functions of protecting the public health of Rhode Islanders. It cannot stand. So I ask you to submit feedback to the governor's office. If you go to the Rhode Island 2030 plan, just Google that online. The governor's office is soliciting feedback. Please talk to your state legislators about the importance of funding public health. Consider supporting the millionaire's tax or the 1% tax that would help to fund priorities in Rhode Island like this that have been severely underfunded for far, far too long. It is time for millionaires, for the upper class to be paying their fair share instead of just expecting everyone else to pick up the slack. It is not fair. It is not right. You can learn more at revenueforri.org. Sign a petition there. Get involved in that movement. Lobby your legislators. Make your voice heard about how we can, how millionaires should be paying their fair share here in Rhode Island. And it's also important for all of us to talk to our elected officials to understand the value of science and public health and oppose the political interference in scientific endeavors and anti-science policies and funding cuts that are being enacted and proposed every day by the Trump administration. These cannot stand, and we need to speak up against it and get our legislators to stand up and not allow the administration to make unilateral cuts.
Woo!
So, Rhode Islanders and Americans nationwide, we need to support public health. We need to support science. We need to recognize that science is for everyone and it benefits everyone. When the federal government supports scientific research through taxpayer funding, when it supports public health through taxpayer funding, it's fueling innovation, creating jobs, saving lives, and sustaining the world that we all live in. From purified water to the polio vaccine to the cell phone you might be holding up, science has significantly impacted our lives in countless ways. So we encourage all of you to stand up for science, to stand up for public health, and to stand against these awful cuts that we are seeing. Please, please stand up for our lives, stand up for our health, and stand up together. Thank you.
Alrighty, folks. So we'll have a few more speakers, but then after that, we'll get the chance. So I'm sure you'll see there are a lot of tables set up all around. We'll actually get the chance to network, to meet us, see what all our amazing orgs are doing and how we can help each other. But next up, I'd like to invite up, Next up, I'd love to invite up Claire from the Rhode Island chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. Claire?
Hi everyone. Excuse me. Can everyone hear me? No? Louder? Is this good? Okay. I'm Claire from the Rhode Island Democratic Socialists of America. Thank you so much to the organizers of this event, and thank you everyone for coming out. Okay, sure. In 1884, the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions gave the bosses a deadline for instituting the 8-hour workday, May 1st, 1886. That day would be a national day of action, and for the 2 years leading up to it, American workers prepared by organizing strikes, marches, and rallies. When the day arrived, hundreds of thousands of workers nationwide went on strike. In response, the bosses used mass violence in an attempt to quash the workers' movement. But their efforts to subjugate the working class only cemented that day as a celebration of International Workers' Day, dedicated to those killed at the McCormick Reaper Works and Haymarket. Now, May 1st represents the radical tradition of the labor movement, the struggle for freedom, and the power of an international united working class. Today, the Trump administration, on behalf of the capitalist class, is wielding the tools of state repression to carry out an anti-worker agenda. It attempted to suspend collective bargaining rights for federal workers and is attacking the programs and protections that the labor movement fought for. It is kidnapping immigrant workers and student activists in an attempt to silence and subdue us. What's happening can only be described as open, blatant class warfare. Many times, the bosses have tried to scare the working class into obedience, to scare us off from organizing in our workplaces, from building militant movements, from speaking out against oppression wherever it's found. But like in 1886, this repression only strengthens our resolve in the fight against exploitation. The tactics that the capitalist class is using right now and has used throughout history shows that they are the ones who are scared because they recognize the power of an organized and conscious working class. We have an opportunity to demonstrate this power with a general strike on May Day in 2028. But you don't get a strike just by declaring it. Our success on that day depends on what we do today and in the coming months and years. The rallies and celebrations that are happening all across the country today are an incredible show of working class solidarity and are important as we plan for 2028, but we need long-term action to secure permanent change. Labor organizers are already building a movement to unite workers within unions and across industries. We need to bolster these efforts by creating structures for rank-and-file workers to support contract fights and new organizing in all industries. We need to bring more people into the labor movement, to organize the unorganized and build solidarity across the working class. We need to support workers in their struggle for increased democracy in their unions, workplaces, and communities. As socialists, DSA fights for democracy everywhere. We want to give working people the experience of true democratic decision-making, not just at the ballot box, but at work and beyond. Ultimately, we envision a world in which society is governed by the will of the working class majority and organized for the common good. But because our society is organized around the needs of the few, we rarely get to exercise democratic control over many aspects of our lives. Now, the capitalist class is threatening the last bastions of democracy in America by attacking our rights to protest, to criticize genocide and US imperialism, and to organize. It's time to remind them that without us, their system cannot function. And the history of the labor movement proves that when workers unite within unions and independent parties and fight the boss together, we win. We have the power to radically restructure society. We just need to realize it. Thank you.
Alrighty, so we already heard from Erin about all the attacks and cuts on scientific research and public health research and things of that nature. So what do? They cut the funding for research, and then more people get sick, and what do? They overwork the doctors and the nurses and refuse to give them fair treatment at work. So to help speak to that, I'd love to invite up Murph, who is a lead organizer for the healthcare union SEIU 1199 that represents many of Rhode Island's hospital workers, nursing homes, and other frontline workers. I'd love to welcome up Murph.
Hi, everybody. Happy May Day. I'm Murph. I'm a lead elected organizer with SEIU 1199 Healthcare Workers Union. We represent thousands of healthcare workers across the state in nursing homes, hospitals, home care workers just had their election victory and have joined our union in the past month. We represent childcare workers, workers at the Groden School right up the street, bus drivers and aides, and much more. So that brings me to, they told me that we were talking about where the labor movement came from today. And our history as women in the labor movement came second to the guys who got to join unions first. There was the first law that allowed for American workers to join unions explicitly excluded jobs that were traditionally employed by people of color and by women.
Shame!
So what we did was we shut it down.
Woo!
In our union's history is in New York City, Black and Jewish pharmacists and women of color who are working as service workers in hospitals organized every damn hospital in New York City, and they shut it down. And they said that they would not go back in just for the contract they negotiated, but they would only go back in and have hospitals reopened in New York City if they also got the law passed to have the right to be in a union. And that took fire, and now we have consistently continued to fight for the right of all workers to be in a union. Our history in this state of Rhode Island is that childcare workers, just over 10 years ago, were still excluded under the law from having a union, and they organized and they fought, and they had childcare workers elected into office, and then those people passed the law to recognize them as included in the law to be able to organize. And the same is true for home care workers. And so I think we've added a lot of great things to the labor movement as women over the years. And it's been in a way that we understand as a union who is largely female and women of color, that being inclusive is the only way that we are going to be able to have the right representation to fight and win and move everyone all together up and forward. And so in our union, we represent everybody who works at an employer. At our hospitals and our nursing homes, we represent everybody who touches anything that has to do with care, or not, or works in the office, or is a housekeeper, or a dietary worker, or a social worker, or a unit secretary, or a nurse, or an LPN, or a mental health worker. The list can go on and on. And because of that, we have been able to have some serious fights and victories recently. At Women and Infants, just a few months ago, every single worker was prepared to shut it down. And when I say shut it down, they can't turn the lights on without us in the building. We do everything in there. Our members do every single thing in there. And we took the biggest strike vote we've ever had at that chapter. We had 90% of our members vote yes to authorize a strike. And we won the best contract that we've seen at that hospital. We protected all of our health care. Healthcare workers deserve care too. We got the wages that people need to be able to continue with the cost of living and have competitive pay. And we won access to a full training fund for people to be able to advance their careers at the hospital. Serious patient care issues are happening across our country and across our state because we don't have adequate funding to be able to operate the hospital the way patients in this state deserve. And that is true for many of the places we represent, nursing homes. We are about to engage in a fight with many of our nursing homes, so you'll be seeing those, and I hope you pay attention and come out and support the hardworking CNAs and dietary workers and housekeepers who work in our nursing homes across the state. They are making poverty wages. We have members who are living in their cars, who on some days when they don't work, they don't eat because they eat at the hospital or the nursing home. So we really need support. And to many points made earlier, we need to keep organizing all across of healthcare so that we can really have the reins and be able to move our healthcare system to where it needs to be. I'll just give you one more quick update from our union, is that at Butler Hospital, where we should represent 800 bargaining unit workers, but we have over 100 vacancies because they can't recruit or retain staff, so we represent 700 workers there, but again, wall to wall. And those workers in the past 4 or 5 years since COVID have had an increase of 4 times more injuries over the course of 4 years. In just 2 years, it increased by 41%. We have hundreds of assaults a year. And not just assaults, but injuries in the kitchen and in housekeeping. When you don't have enough staff, you get burned. When you don't have enough staff, the cart can roll over people's feet. It's not just about what's happening on the units, it's across the board. People are suffering and they're not able to pay their bills. We had a survey at Butler that said over 60% of our members are unable to pay for the cost of housing and the cost of groceries, hospital workers. So we got organized and we are having a beautiful fight over there. I just came from Butler, where workers are signing up on their W-9s for the strike fund because they voted, overwhelming majority, 99% of voters voted yes to authorize a strike notice, which we delivered this past Tuesday. And so we're going to go be at the table, and we hope management moves. But if not, we'll meet you all. I hope to see you on Blackstone Boulevard, where we'll be fighting for Butler workers in a fair contract. Lastly, if you want to hang out sooner than that, on this Saturday, we are going to the State House to march on Governor McKee. We have thousands of our members sign a petition demanding a moral health care budget. Currently, McKee's budget proposes to cut hundreds of millions of dollars, $25 million each year for hospital funding and for nursing home funding. We are absolutely against that. We know the money's tight in the state. I think I could think of a couple places to look for it, Brown University and other places, but it's not going to be on the back of workers, and it's not going to be on the back of our patients. So please join us this May 3rd to march on the governor and demand a moral budget. Thank you very much.
Lots of healthcare wins recently. Can we get another round of applause? All right, y'all, we're slowly nearing the end of our speaking program. Next up, I'd like to invite up a representative from the SLA at Brown, the Student Labor Alliance, which has been instrumental in bringing together different labor organizations and different unions from across Brown's campus. But I'll let him talk more. Please welcome Carlo.
How's everybody doing today? Yeah! Can you hear me? My name is Carlo. I'm a leader of the Student Labor Alliance at Brown University and at RISD. In March, Brown fired a documented union dining worker for his immigration status. Shame! Shame! His name is Felix. Felix is documented. He needed to have his papers renewed. He requested them to be renewed on time. A delay occurred on the government's end. No idea how that could happen. And he went into the I-9 office when he got his papers with a steward. The I-9 office said, these are in order. We're going to send them to Dining Services Administration, and you will be rehired. They lied. Brown University has not rehired him. They have refused to rehire him. They did not tell him he was fired. They did not tell the union he was fired. He woke up one day, he checked his work email, it was gone. That was it. Brown thinks that they can shut us down and sit us down. Brown thinks they can shut us up and sit us down because they got $8 billion and we got lit. Because we got scholarships that they can take. Because we work in departments that they might cut. Because we got jobs that they can revoke at the click of a button. They don't respect unions, and they don't respect workers. Let's show them why they should. Tomorrow, for the first time in I don't know how long, the dining workers at Brown are marching on the boss. Hell yeah! Hell yeah! That's May 2nd, tomorrow, Friday, at 2:30 p.m. at University Hall. A delegation of dining workers will be presenting our petition with over 700 signatures to rehire Felix immediately. Every single one of you is invited. We will be out there with a group of students, workers, and other union representatives waiting for Christina Paxson to say yes. Please be there. Other than that, all I have to say is if you are a student here and you're interested in being involved, it's a little late in the semester, but come up to me, please, or come up to Katya. Katya, raise your hand. She's one of ours, and we will plug you in. With that, Friday, May 2nd, 2:30 p.m., the Main Green, University Hall, and solidarity.
Y'all, can you repeat that for me real quick? Oh wait, shit. Worst time for this. Oh yeah. We won't back down, we'll start the fight. Workers of the world unite. We won't back down, we'll start the fight. Workers of the world unite. We won't back down, we'll start the fight. Workers of the world unite. Woo! All right, so one of our final speakers is a tenant organizer with Atlantic Mills. A few years ago, I had no idea that tenant organizing existed. Then I read about it, and I thought it was incredible because I didn't think something like that was possible. Could I welcome up from the Atlantic Mills Tenants Organization, Eloy, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is Eloy Rodas, and I'm the director of the Onieville Neighborhood Association, an organization committed to empowering low-income and immigrant communities through a framework of people defense, popular education, and collective power. I am also an organizer with the Atlantic Mills Tenant Union, based in a historical building that more than 100 small businesses, artists, and grassroots organizations call home. Last but not least, I'm a volunteer for the Deportation Defense Line, a rapid response hotline run entirely by community members that people can call to report ICE sightings, kidnappings, and brutality so that our network can mobilize in defense of our people. All of these struggles are inseparable because they share the same root, a billionaire class that puts profit over people. A system designed to protect bosses, landlords, and corporations while criminalizing and displacing the rest of us. A system that hands unlimited resources to police, ICE, and the military to terrorize our communities at home and abroad with total impunity. A system that creates and puts parasites like Trump and Musk in power. This is not an anomaly, this is by design. Onieville is one of the many underserved communities where jobs are scarce and the few that exist are low wage and unstable. The people here struggle every day with poverty, lead contamination in the water, and a shrinking supply of housing, collapsing schools, and gutted health centers. It's a place where the needs of residents are routinely ignored while the city prioritizes luxury development and gentrification. One of the most glaring examples is the way developers have exploited the 8 Law, adding a token affordable unit just to qualify for massive tax breaks and increase their wealth. Now, House Bill 5688 threatens to make it even worse, rewarding luxury conversions like the one targeting Atlantic Mills. This bill doesn't fix the loopholes, it widens them. If it passes, it will accelerate the destruction of community spaces across our neighborhood. The Atlantic Mills Tenant Union formed because we were pushed to the edge. For too long, we have brought life to that historical mill while dealing with neglect, rent hikes, and arbitrary threats. Now, the building is up for sale and we're expected to keep quiet while they decide our future without us. For almost 3 decades, the Onieville Neighborhood Association has been a lifeline for skill building, leadership, and connection. And in just the past 6 months, we faced lockouts, racist harassment, and more recently, the threat of eviction, while the landlords have outright ignored serious health hazards like pest infestations and leak in the ceilings. They even use the space we pay rent for as their own private free storage unit, while demanding we don't touch anything and keep paying rent. This is why we're demanding collective bargaining. We want real negotiations. No more surprise fees, no more backroom deals, no more evictions. When one tenant speaks up, they get threatened. When all of us resist, we become impossible to ignore. The attacks on organizations like ours are linked to the attacks on labor unions, public housing, and immigrant families. Trump and the billionaires are trying the classic tactic of the bosses, divide and conquer, trying to pit workers with U.S. citizenship against immigrant workers. The attacks on immigrant workers, international students, and Palestine organizers by ICE are directly linked to the attacks on trade union rights. They are all aimed at weakening our solidarity, convincing people that to be afraid to stand up. We saw the awful attempts to demonize the smart union member Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man just trying to work hard and raise his family here like any other, who was kidnapped and abducted to El Salvador with no due process. That's why it's so important for the entire labor movement to stand united in the face of state terrorism, because today it's immigrant workers, tomorrow it will be labor organizers. ICE raids happen in our workplaces, in our schools, outside hospitals and clinics, at citizenship interviews. They strike where we are most vulnerable, making people too afraid to show up for work, too afraid to take their kids to school, too afraid to seek medical care when they need it. They want us to keep our heads down, to believe that if we hide well enough and keep quiet, we'll be safe. But we're not going to fall for that. This is why a steadfast network of volunteers is operating at Deportation Defense Line in Rhode Island, coordinated by a coalition between AMOR, ONA, and PSL, and the entire community. This hotline is a number that people can call when they see ICE activity or ICE comes to their door. When someone calls the line, we walk them through their rights. We send verifiers to respond within minutes. We take down batch numbers and document what's happening. And if it's a raid or potential raid, we mobilize the community in our alert channels to go to the scene and make it clear that we will not allow our neighbors, loved ones, and friends and family to be kidnapped without a fight. Just last week, our city had a major community mobilization after one of our neighbors was kidnapped, beaten, and tased by ICE agents. They injured our community members so bad that he had to be taken to the hospital. More than 80 Rhode Islanders rushed to the scene of the hospital within minutes of our message. We protested outside the hospital for nearly 3 hours, while ICE and the Providence Police collaborated to stop our detained community member from accessing the lawyer. ICE ultimately resorted to smuggling the targeted community member out of the facility, clearly terrified by the turnout and in defense of immigrant families, instead of brazenly operating as normal. We know that this is just the beginning. ICE is still active in our communities, and we expect to have to mobilize to fight back against more deportations. This means we need to build up our numbers and power so that no more of our people are kidnapped. As workers, as tenants, as immigrants, we will not back down or keep quiet. We're building power to win. We won't wait around for cosmetic reforms while the foundations of our communities are ripped out. The two-party system won't save us either. They've already shown they'll sit back while landlords, CEOs, and billionaires carve up our cities for profit. While ICE tears families apart, they hide behind statements, symbolic gestures, or outright cooperation. Their silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. These attacks won't be stopped by lawsuits or press conferences. They will be stopped by coordinated actions, strikes, walkouts, takeovers, and pressure that disrupts business as usual. When we move together, we have the power to bring them to a halt and to win the long overdue changes we've been denied. Why should the wealthy and the politicians decide everything? We are the organizers, the shopkeepers, the teachers, the cleaners, the builders, the caretakers. We've kept each other alive and will keep organizing until we get the world we deserve. And we're not just defending ourselves against the wealthy, we are fighting for our vision of a world for working people. A world where housing, education, healthcare, and dignity aren't for sale. A world where public money goes to public needs, not endless war and corporate bailouts. A world where working people run the show because we already run everything else. Thank you.
All right, y'all. To close us out before we get to our lovely music and so we can start to mingle and connect with each other, we have our wonderful acting president while our beloved other president is on paternity leave. She is someone who our friends will lovely call the People's Tia. She's had a lot put on her shoulders, but she's kicking ass, and I couldn't be more happy to introduce the acting president of GLO and a very good personal friend of mine, Victoria.
everyone. I'll be brief. I know everyone wants to mingle and hear the beautiful music from our very own GLOW leader, Ben in the back, and Andrea. So I'll be brief. First, thank you all for being here, and happy International Workers' Day to you all. Woo! To all who I have not met yet, I'm Victoria. I'm a graduate worker at Brown, and I'm the acting president of GLOW, the graduate labor organization, just one of the units under Local 6516. A big shout out to Local 6516. I know we're here in the crowd. Just this month, our local passed a constitution referendum, which expands our previous constitution. It was made, with the vision of the structure and representation from all units, because our first, a little louder, is that better? Can y'all hear me? Cool. I can be loud. I'm trying to tone it down a little. I've heard I can be very loud. Louder? Okay, cool. Okay. So this new constitution gives us the structure and the representation from all units that'll allow us to expand even more, right? We want to be wall to wall. And in this moment, right, labor power is our way to fight back against, this administration. When preparing my remarks, I knew that I had to speak to the moment. Right now, labor and the communities that so many of us represent, right, our fellow workers represent, are under attack. We all knew this administration would be anti-labor, that it would be racist, that it would be anti-immigrant, that it would be imperialist and homophobic. But I don't think any of us predicted exactly how this catastrophe that is in our country and in our world, would happen due to this administration. It would take me hours if I tried to list every name of an immigrant that's been disappeared without due process, or a Palestinian person or a Palestinian solidarity activist harmed, whether via state disappearing or violent foreign policy, genocide. Every queer person further marginalized by these repressive policies, entire industries such as healthcare and the academy being undermined, being defunded, their power being seized, every poor person that's robbed of the social safety net that could bring them out of poverty, that could keep them from starvation, right? Making it more likely that our children, our babies, are not going to be well fed. They're not going to be safe and housed. Their education is at risk, right? Or even this terrible economic policy that many of us are still trying to figure out how it will affect us, right? From those who work to bring us the products, right? We know that the shelves are soon going to start being empty. And to those who really depend on those, more affordable products, the reality is not good for labor right now. It's not good for Rhode Island. It's not good for America. It's not good for the world. So I hope that this Labor Day, all that you heard from the orgs, all that you'll hear when you, talk and walk around and get to know each other, that you join one of these fights, that you join one of these orgs, and that you join labor's fight to shape our workplaces and the world for the people. I want to say thank you to all the attendees and to all the participating orgs. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for understanding the moment. And I urge you to find a group to be a part of, because it will take every single one of us. It's going to take all of us here. It's going to take all of our friends. It's going to take all of their friends to fight back, because that's the union vision, right? We understand that. It's our collective power. We already have the collective power. We just have to stand together and use it. So let's get organized, and let's fight back for our dignity, for the dignity of all communities, for workers, for our families, for the poor, for Black and brown communities, for immigrants, for Palestinians, for Palestine solidarity activists, for the queer and trans community, for all whoever becomes the latest scapegoat, right? Let's stand together and protect them. The game of stealing... Sorry, I'm a speedy talker. The game of stealing power from the people who generate it, right? This is the game of stealing power from the people who generate it. We are the workers. We make the world run. We ask, actually, We demand to be treated with dignity.
Woo!
So this International Workers' Day, let's stand together to make Rhode Island safer, New England safer, along with, you know, all the labor coalitions that are doing something very similar to this across the country to make the country and the world safer. Thank y'all for being here.
All right, thank you, Victoria. All right, y'all, so now is the best part of the event. Please walk around, talk to people from other orgs, see how you can help. We also have a banner under the tent where we can write on the big banner what our visions are for the future of organizing in Rhode Island. And then, yeah, we'll have some music playing, and our lovely musician, Ben, who's a graduate worker at Brown, will also provide some music as well. All right, I'm excited to speak to you folks one-on-one as we network. Thanks, y'all.